Ecclesiastes again tonight, chapter 3. And we're going to be looking at this in light of how Solomon wrote after he made his statements about the things that are vanity, which would include everything after you've seen everything that he said. But all of his things are negative as far as what he sees. He even starts out the book in verse 2. He says, "Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Now, that's where he came to. And he was writing this down, talking about man, or talking about life, or how man would live. And he talked about several things. He said, there's nothing new under the sun. I'm just a couple of verses just to mention what's written in there. In verse 12 of chapter 1, he talks about 12 and 13. He's the vanity and wisdom. By the way, I started underlining it. I haven't gone back and looked for it every time. But if you read this, you might notice what he says about his heart. It's over and over in there. So the seriousness, the emotional feelings that he had about what he was doing was in there. In verse 9, it says, no, there's no new thing under the sun. We said that already. But anyway, he said in verse 13 of chapter 1, I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of men to be exercised therewith. And down in verse 16 talks about mine own heart. Verse 17, I gave my heart to know wisdom. And then he comes to the conclusion. He says, all is vanity with that. And you continue in chapter 2, and there he talks about, in the first 3 verses, about the vanity of pleasure. And then he goes on, and pretty much the rest of that chapter is about vanity of personal accomplishments. Verse 15, I said in my heart, as it happeneth, to the fool so happeneth even to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart that this also is vanity. And you understand what he's saying there. He's, if the same thing, whether you're wise or whether you're not, and same thing happens to both, then there's really no benefit. That's what he's talking about. Verse 17, therefore I hated life. That's a big statement for a man who has everything. And this is what all of his thinking, all of the things he's tried, and they've all led him to a dead end away from God. And he said, therefore I hated life, because the work that was wrought under the sun is grievous unto me, for all is vanity and vexation of spirit. So in all of his studies and whatever he was doing and things he tried, verse 18, yea, I hated all my labor, which I had taken under the sun, because I should leave it unto the man that shall be after me. He's talking, of course, about the fact that he built all of these things, had these things built, but one day he would go on, pass away, and somebody else would get it. And there's a lot of that when people receive things from someone else. Maybe they will be a good steward of it. Maybe they won't. You just don't know. And so you have no control over that. And he didn't like that. He said, I'll do all of this and somebody else is going to get it. That frustrated him. At the end of chapter 2, he says, this also is vanity and vexation of spirit. Now I'm thinking about how he felt. That's a pretty defeated type of attitude there. Now, he said these things in chapters 1 and 2, and we just skimmed over a few of the things he said that he tried and things that were negative and so forth. But in these 2 chapters, he's writing in the mindset of someone who is trying to prove the purpose or the need of anything, really. And what's the benefit? How do we benefit from these things? And he didn't see it, and doing all that he did. Now, chapter 3, which is what we're going to look at tonight, and it goes all the way to chapter 10. And what he does in these chapters is really refute his own statements. He has arguments that he makes about why everything is not vanity, And no matter what happens, there's a God and so forth. I was thinking as I studied this last couple of days, I was thinking how, in my way of thinking, in my day, when it wasn't so cluttered with all of the news and all of the information, I really think probably true, that if we didn't have the internet, there wouldn't be so much of vileness as there is. It wouldn't be here. And people would be more segregated to their local news, and there'd be more people saved. I believe that's probably the truth. But they get together on the internet, they clone, they make themselves a group. And it's just true about young people. When they're in a home where they don't feel loved, they'll go to school and they'll find a group and find somebody that accepts them, and they're gone. That's what's going to happen to them. That's why they end up in these gangs and all that business. So we're going to look at this. I'm going to say a couple of things. I wrote this down, and I did write some statements, and they're kind of lengthy, but I can't tell you just in memory what I want you to get. So I'm going to read them whenever I get to one of them. There's not many, but it's a few. I did write down a couple of statements by a couple of professors in our major universities in that day, well, still today, as far as name, but not so much in what they're producing. But there was a man by the name of George Sanataya. I'm guessing at that, Santayana. He taught at Harvard in 1889 through 1912. Here's what he said about man in reference to everything else. He said, "Why shouldn't things be as largely absurd, futile, and transitory as when you speak?" That's what he says. Why shouldn't things be largely absurd, futile, and transitory? Question. They are so, and so are we. They go very well together. That's what he was thinking. He wasn't mixing it, and nothing between man. There's no difference. That's all he saw. It's absurd to think that there's a difference. The next man, his name is Joseph Crutchin, and he was a professor of English in Columbia University, 1937 through 1952. Here's what he said. There is no reason to suppose that man's life has any more meaning than the life of the humblest insect that crawls from annihilation to another. That's just say it's evolutionary. It's what it is. And that's what they believed. They didn't see any difference. Now, I wonder, I hear these young people just like you have. I've seen them. Well, adults, were supposedly adults. They're just people that are still childish, and all of the insanity that goes on with that. I don't know what creates all of that. I just know the devil's busy blinding the minds of people, and he's done a masterful job at turning even the church into a mess. And that's not a negative thing. That's a positive thing. It has happened. We're in that time where we are, and we should expect it. Last days, perilous times, we're there, and all of those things that are happening, where they're happening. And I've had someone comment about his experience in churches today, and he said, you go to these churches and nobody ever hears the gospel anymore in the church. I said, that's right. That's what they're doing. They're just entertaining. Now, I wrote this down. There is so much more for man. Man is a body, soul, and spirit interacting with the Lord. Animals have life cycles, but men have history. Now, I got that statement from someone else. I liked it. Animals have a life cycle, but men have history. If we are not unique or important and have importance, then life has no purpose. Now, I don't know. I think about all that God has put in order and the things that he put in place that I don't understand how a person, if they were just subjective about truth rather than coming in with a preconceived attitude or even a hatred for the things of God. That wasn't like that in my day. It just wasn't. And there's no hostilities. People didn't go to church. They did things, but it was kind of under the, in the closet kind of thing. They didn't. I remember being with my dad. He had to worked 2 jobs, and he drove a bus, and then he worked for Western Auto, and they financed their sales in-house. And so people would not pay their bill or they'd be late. And his job, he was paid to go out and collect indoor, pick up whatever it was. I had to do that, pick up a television on a Saturday morning with kids in there. I don't ever want to do that again. But he took me with him, and we went some places and came to this one house. It was downtown Louisville somewhere. I don't remember where, but anyway, he went in there and he was gone just a little bit, and he come back and he said, son, he said, that man and that woman, they're not married, but they live together. And I was 9 years old, and I knew that was wrong. You don't have to tell me, I knew that was wrong. And it was not this way. There was at least some kind of sense of humanity in people. Now they're just like animals. All right. Now I'm going to give you 4 arguments proving that life is more than what these men say, and more than you just live and you die and you do what you can in this life. Can you imagine living the life that these people are living? And I say that with confidence. When you listen to them, they are mentally messed up. They're messed up bad, and screaming and yelling and putting it on the internet because Trump won the election, and uncontrollable. One lady said, I had a nervous breakdown. I said, what did she put? They're soft. And so anyway, that's what's going on. And it just amazes me, these people. And nobody's saying anything about the way they look. Just as weird as it can be. It's not right to do all of this, not order. I'm going to say it. It's just wrong to look like that. Just the fact you look like that means you don't have any sense. And I don't want to talk to you about it, or talk to you about the Lord, but whatever you're going to say doesn't matter to me. Go get your hair fixed and come back. I'm not going to do it. So anyway, several arguments that he had, and a statement was made that life is monotonous. And so he goes on and proves that it isn't. If you look in Ecclesiastes in chapter 3, and look at verses 1 through 8. And he's going to talk about, and I'll use the words of a direction, if you will, 4 arguments. Number 1 is there's something above man. That's what I wrote down. So when you look at verses 1 through 8, these things are above us in the sense that man can't control these things, and they are of God. So look what it says, and there's a whole lot of it, and it's those things that most everybody knows a little bit about, and starts making those statements about those things. It says, to everything there is a season and a time, to every purpose under the sun. So that's the things that are above. So we look toward the heavens, and we think about all of the order, and we talked about it, and you know about it as well as I, or better, in the sense that how much man is dependent in their space programs for the accuracy of things being the same all of the time, wherever they are, as far as movement, how long it's going to be, what the curvature needs to be. Every bit of that has to be figured in order to put a satellite or whatever in a particular place, or bring something back. That's amazing what has to take place. What's amazing is they're using God's stuff. They're using God's information about placement and how things are where they're supposed to be. Miss Libby loves to look at the star Venus, and it shines really brightly off toward the west from us. And it's very bright, and it's low in the sky. And of course, it's dark out there, and you can see it. And the other day, what was the other star? Venus? What did you say? Oh, it was the moon. I'm sorry. That's right. But anyway, come outside. You got to see this, So I do. I go look, and I go, okay, can I go back in? No, she likes to look at that. So that's fine. But anyway, these 4 factors, I'll look at it and think about it just a little bit here. There's something above man that he needs to consider in light of God controlling things. And let's look at these things he controls. Verse number 1, for everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Now, seasons are very important. And I'm talking about regular seasons of 3 months average. And personally, I like 4 seasons. I don't like summer heat, but I know fall's coming. Okay, that's all I can say. I don't like all the cold ice and snow anymore, but I know spring's come. No, it's not so bad. I would rather have that than like in India, it's so many months rain and then so many months dry. They're in their coldest, or they just leaving their coldest time of the year right now, which they had. I said, how cold? He said about 50. So it does get lower than I thought it did, but still, it's that way. Their rain is it's not like ours, a shower this week and next week. Generally speaking, they don't have that. So that's why all of the barren areas and so forth. But anyway, so they do, when they get rain, and it won't quit. Seems like it just rains and rains and rains. But there's a season for everything and a time for everything. The fact that there's time, think about it. Think about, I can't even imagine it. What would it be like if we didn't have the measure of time? It would be chaos. How would you, when are you going to be there? What do you mean be there? What do you mean? What are you talking about? Well, how long is it going to, that doesn't matter anymore. How can you say that? You can't, that just drive you nuts. You couldn't handle that. You got to have markers. God's a God of order, and so he gives us time. And time, I didn't know this for years and years. Time is a dimension. It can be changed and it can be measured. And that's the two of the things they talk about when you talk about something being a dimension. And it has a beginning and it has an end. And all of that in between is where we are. So God set up time from the very beginning. The first thing he said when he started creating things was the night and the evening and the morning were the first day. So God already started time, had already started it. With when exactly, I don't know. But I just know he did it. And God set up time. And we live by it. And our bodies live by it. You get out of whack if you get out of your season changing times all the time. I know a guy that worked for, he's my neighbor years ago. He worked for a chemical factory down on Cane Run Road. It was Borden Chemical. And he was worked days. And the next week he worked evenings. And the next week he worked third shift. I said, how do you stand that? He said, my body can't get used to it. It's very difficult because it just keeps your body tore up. It just doesn't function right. And he hated it, but it was a good job as far as money is concerned. But anyway, it was a terrible thing. And when they talk about time as far as when you fly or come home, I don't know what jet lag is per se, but I do know what fatigue is. But it makes a difference when you all of a sudden you're in a different time zone. In Romania, it's 7 hours. Sometimes for a while, a couple of months, it's 6 hours. But then they move their calendars or their clocks too. But and of course, in India, it's 9 hours and 30 minutes difference. I don't know why that bothers me, that 30 minutes. That's silly, but that's what it is. So he says, he's talking about, he says, so for everything, there's a season and a time to every purpose. Can you imagine living your life and you had no purpose? No purpose. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. Everyone is a contrast, one to the other. And so it's a time, back up in verse 2, and a time to plant and a time to pluck up. Every farmer knows about the importance of the soil and about the rain. And when it comes, you can put a crop out, but you can't make it grow. And we always, that was one of the things, we weren't afraid, but you check the weather. You check the weather every day. What's it going to be like? We had rain gauges to measure how much rain we got and if it was enough or whatever. And I've seen it dry, you have too, and I've seen it wet. And sometimes you have a terrible storm. If you got tobacco and the big old tobacco leaves and it comes a hailstorm, it'll ruin your crop. So there's a lot. They don't have trust. They just have to deal with it. And that's the way it is. Of course, now they have insurance. Everybody's got insurance and they get paid for their crop anyway. So a time to kill, I don't know when that is. A time to heal and a time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. Not me. No. Verse 5, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. So it's all about balance. And now, which one at which time, I don't know. And I've experienced it in my life as you have, but it's not a particular time. A time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. I didn't write down how many of those there are in there, but those are things that come from God only. He sets these boundaries, and he sets the boundaries when it comes to food and plants and how long it takes to be in the ground and what kind of soil does it like and what it does. All of that matters, all of it. If some plants love acidic soil, usually berries, they love acidic soil. Strawberries, blackberries, any of those berries they do, but they don't like alkaline soil. They won't do well. So God's made them that way. So you got to know all that stuff. You have to know the pH level. You have to know these different things. I took my dirt to the Kentucky Extension office in Hardinsburg, and they sent my dirt back to University of Kentucky. I took it from 3 places so they could tell me what my soil needed because I was going to have it fertilized, and I wanted to know what I should do. And it comes up different from what people have this thing. Well, what kind of fertilizer do I should get? 10, 10, 10 is what they'll say. 10, 10, 10. There's all three, just 10%. Well, you don't need much phosphate. So, you're throwing some of it away. It's really the truth. It just, or 19, 19, 10 or something like that, the different things. But the best way to do it is have it tested and then have them deliver it and spread it for you, which we did. So anyway, it was 3 different levels, 3 different areas. And if I just got the soil samples from other places, I knew that right in the lowest place of my property, the soil is very good. The soil is always good at the lowest place. That's where it is. And it's deep, but up toward the place where it starts to climb, it starts getting rocky. There's no soil there. It's just terrible. So you have to know how to do these things based on what God has said about them. I know I don't want to go into all this. Potatoes, they're legumes, and they have to have alkaline soil. And it goes on, many of them that are sub-earth, if you will, they have to come up, dug up. They're different like that. All right. So these things here, let me read something to you. He saw something above man and God who is in control. I wrote this down. And a balance in life experiences. We need order. And God's God of order. And this world is in chaos. And we don't like it. It's a problem for us. And we try to keep our lives in order with this book because God has given us boundaries. And he tells us to not remove the ancient landmarks. He tells us about our lot. We have a lot in life, and it may have something in it, but God does that. No, the second thing is he says, look up, and then he talks about what's in man that linked him to God. There's something that links man to God. Look, if you will, in verse 9 through 14. He says, what profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth? I have seen the travail which God had given to the sons of men. Why? To be exercised in it. Now, I can't comment on that any more than God gives travail. In times of travail, God has given that to sons of men to exercise them. And God does this that way as well. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he has set the world in their heart so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. God has made everything beautiful. Now, I don't know what you like, but I do like to see wildflowers, and I do like to see flowers that have so many lines in there that is vertical, and then it's one color, and you go find another flower, and it's the same way. That's amazing. They say I don't know how they know, but no two snowflakes are exactly the same. I don't know. Is that even possible? Is that a true statement? Does anybody know? I don't know about that, but I've heard it, but I don't know, whatever. But he hath set the world in their heart. Now, he's talking about mankind setting the world in their heart is they're in their heart is something for the world. And you and I had that. But when you get saved, he gives us, well, I got some verses here. I'll just, well, where did I put them? Yeah, there it is. I want you to look at 1 Corinthians 7:31. 1 Corinthians 7:31. Love not the world. You know this verse. Love not the world, nor the things in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. And we're told not to do the things that the Gentiles do, in the sense of what they do regarding the world, worldly things. We're not supposed to act like the world. We're not supposed to look like the world. We're supposed to be peculiar people, and because we are God's people. But 1 Corinthians 2:11. No, is that right? I don't think that's right. I'm sorry. No, that's not right. Did I write it over here? All right, I'm going to have to forget. I didn't write the verse down. I thought I did. Sure thought I had, but I don't see it. Well, okay, I'm sorry. Let's just read verse 19 and go on. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Even one thing befalleth them, as the one dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they have all one breath, so that a man hath more preeminence above, Yea, they have all one breath, so that a man hath no preeminence above a beast, for all is vanity. No advantage when it comes to dying and stop breathing and so forth. Verse 20, all go down into, I think I'm in the wrong place. I'm ahead of myself, I think. No, wait a minute, I'm sorry. 9 through 14, I did get wrong, I'm sorry. And this is about man, something in man that linked him to God. I thought, man, that doesn't make sense. So it didn't make sense. Verse 9 says, what profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth? I have seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised by. We mentioned that earlier. He hath made every beautiful in his time. Also, he hath set the world in their heart. And that's what we were talking about. And I got off one page. So that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. God requires faith. And God doesn't tell us everything. He doesn't make it logical. It isn't logical, is it? Weather's not. I mean, you can name anything you want to and try to explain it. And they do with scientific things and so forth. But who makes the circuits that makes the water move like it does? And why is it consistent? And why is it do what it does? I mean, it's been this forever. Well, I say forever. I guess it has. When the England's called the fog, London fog. They have a lot of fog, and the reason they do is because the water comes up along the east coast of America, and it's warm, and it goes across, and the circuit carries it right along their coast, and then you got cold weather and warm water. And that's why there's fog there all the time. So it does it all the time. But God says the water comes down, but the sea's never full. And we know the evaporation. But anyway, and then it comes back down through the valleys, into the valleys, and waters everything again and again and again. All right, verse number 12. I know that there is no good thing to them, but for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life. That's simple. And also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of his labor. That's not eat, drink, and be merry. It's doing it in his labor. It's within reason. That's why I see that. It is a gift of God. Verse 14, I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. I just stopped right there for a while. And I thought about how that's true. Everything God does, it's forever. God knows everything from the beginning to the end, and how people can, I don't know, I'm just speaking out of turn when it comes to understanding mentality of people today. I just know they're very deceived, and they're more than deceived, and they're hostile. But I can't see people, an innocent person, coming into this world and not being affected by anybody else and becoming like those people. Somebody told them something, somebody did something to them. And in our universities, they are teaching stuff that they ought not be teaching. They're teaching kids vulgarity. I'm not going to say anything about it other than it was as bad as anything I've ever heard of what in a school. And there was at a school board, and a parent was reading the book that the kids could check out. And it was as vulgar as anything I've ever heard of. I couldn't believe it. And they were supporting that book along with others. Why would people keep their kids in that school? I don't get it. But that's what they did. That's what they're doing. And they've ruined them. Look what it's done to our young people. It used to be a couple of years ago, my guy said he was gay to his parents, and I was there. And we were talking, and he says he's not really gay. He's not. No, it's just popular to say you are. Well, somebody's messed up. Why isn't there any normacy? They don't see normacy, do they? They don't know what it is for things to be the same. Everything is just radical. And the more radical it is, the more they like it. I mean, why do you have to look like out of norm to such a degree because of you don't just why do you do that? That is an external thing you do that reveals what's going on inside of you internally. You're messed up. The color in the hair, all these colors, and I don't get it. And these haircuts, and if that's what you want to call them. But what bothers me as much as anything is Christian churches are doing it, and kids are doing it. They wear the clothes of the world, they dress like the world, they listen to music of the world. So what's the difference? You can't hardly tell. You can't tell very much. They said they're Christian. That's it. Anything else in their life that says they're God people? No. They look like so-and-so. He lives next door. Well, that's a shame. All right, let's go on. So a couple of other statements I want to make about this. So he saw things that are above man, and that's God, time and seasons and so forth. God is in control of time. So much so I just recently read where he turned back, this puts it back to the sun 10 degrees, I believe it was, in that particular case. Joshua 10, it's more than that. But anyway, and then he saw something in man. There was a link to God. There is a link, and it's in his heart. It didn't take anybody personally to talk to me or tell me anything as a little boy to have God speak to my heart about something that I didn't particularly understand at the time. But now I know, looking back, I have known for a long time that God was specific, doing something with me. And I didn't know anything at all. That's pretty amazing. And he'll do that for anybody. But now these kids, they don't listen. All the video games, internet. People can live their life and be at the edge of suicide and survive staying busy on their phone. People just on the phone. I was at the doctor's office the other day. Everybody had their phones on. And here I come in, I want to talk. I said, I don't remember what it was like when we just came in and talked on these phones. Everybody put them away and we talked. So I thought that was pretty good. They laughed. I said, yeah, I remember. And we enjoyed ourselves talking about that. And then I got my phone out. No, I didn't. So, all right, number 3, Solomon saw something ahead of himself, ahead of man. There's something coming. Every man knows it. It's death. Every man knows that's coming. Answer me this. How does a person hear that they can be saved, whether they understand it or just, I can be saved? All right, I want to know what that is, because I want to know, and that was the question I had, where am I going to go when I die? And God answered that question. But how is it people can be so frivolous and say, well, I think I'm all right? How shallow is that? That's not going to hold water. I'm a good this, or trying to make themselves acceptable by something they do. Well, Cain tried that, didn't work. But I mean, it's amazing to me what people will say. If God's a God of love, you know the things that people say, and you're going to hang your eternal destination on that when you can trust the Lord Jesus Christ. I have trouble understanding that one. I do. I don't understand how you can. I said, and I've said this in the past a long time ago, but I said this. I said, if I'm wrong, and I'm not, but if I were, I've lost nothing if I believe what you do. But if I'm right about what the Bible says, you're going to burn forever. I don't know if I'd take that chance. I just don't think I'd do that. I'd have to consider finding out. You can't just say, I don't believe it. You got to prove it. You better prove it, and you can't. All right, so verse number 15. Solomon saw something ahead of man, and it's death. Verse 15. That which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been. And God required that which is past, I'm sorry. And it says, and moreover, I saw under the sun the place of judgment, that wickedness was there, place of righteousness, that iniquity was there. And I said in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time, there is for every purpose and for every work. I said in my heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that God manifest them, and that they might see that they themselves are beasts. So he said, he's talking about the fact in the future, there's something that's very absolute, and that is death. People say, all God do is die or pay taxes and die. And I don't know how many times I heard that thing. And then, pay taxes, and you got judgment to deal with, but they don't know what that is because they've been blinded out. All right, the last one. God's, to look up, God's order regarding time. Everyone knows there are times and seasons, and we depend on their consistency. We talked about that already, but look, if you will, in verse number 19, rest of the chapter. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Even one thing befalleth them, as that one dieth, and so dieth the other. Yea, they have all one breath, so that a man hath no preeminence above beasts, for all is vanity. All go unto one place. All are of the dust, and all turn to dust again. So he's talking about the body. So it goes back to the same way, whether it be, there's no advantage when it comes to death and what happens to the body. It dies, it goes back to dust. It's no advantage when a person dies, they stop breathing. And whether it be beast or man, doesn't matter. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, verse 21, who knoweth the spirit of man that goeth upward, and the spirit of beast that goeth downward to the earth? I'm curious what people do with that when it talks about the spirit of a beast. and trying to make that more than it is. I can't explain that, but it says that there are 4 types of spirits: a spirit of man, spirit of beast, spirit of God, and the spirit of the devil. The one of the spirit of man and beast is in this particular text, but the one about God is in 1 Corinthians 2:11. I mentioned that earlier, and then the other is the last one. Well, the last one is God himself, and that is, no, it's the devil. I'm sorry. John 4:24. I got it written really small there. Wherefore, verse 21, who knoweth the spirit of man that goeth upward, and the spirit of the beast that goeth downward into the earth? Wherefore I perceive that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his portion. For who shall bring him to see what shall be after him? God's in control of everything, but we got a free will to do what we want to do. We can choose, but in the providence of God, there's nature. We cannot change it. Man's always trying to change things and manipulate things, and there's no telling what they've tried to do with all kinds of things, even creating a person and whatever. But God's got, in his providence, there's laws of God that you can't break. You can't break gravity. You can't do it. You can't do, there's all kinds of things you could mention that you and I believe in and rest in. I'm glad that things are the way they are. I'm glad it's the same tomorrow as it is today. I'm glad breathing is the same way. And, it's without thought for the most part. You don't think about it. My dad did. People with emphysema do. And that's an awful thing to watch. They have to think about breathing, and because it isn't enough. But we don't. And so I'm glad God got everything in order. And I know within his plan, there's a plan for me, or I wouldn't be here. I believe that. God's got a purpose for everybody. I don't care who they are. It doesn't matter. And we don't have any business being high and mighty about what we do or don't do. It's all God or it's nothing. And so God has to use us accordingly. But in here, he's given these arguments to offset what he had said, some of it anyway. And we'll look at it next time. Talk about some more vanity. Things he says are vanity, and he gives the answers there. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the day. And thank you for your promises and your grace and your mercy. Pray that you'd have your way in the hearts of our people, folks that couldn't be here, folks with illnesses. Lord, we'd be wrong if we didn't say thank you for Brother John's report. And we ask that it bless each person. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, Brother.